Good morning, everybody, and a warm welcome to this second of a series of 60-second webinar on today, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. My name is Magali Minet. I'll be your moderator and host for today, and I have the pleasure to lead you throughout the webinar. So a warm welcome. We'll be talking today about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is part of the European Green Deal and the European Textile Strategy. That strategy will change how the textile sector operates within the European market dramatically. And so we are here to help you find your way throughout that strategy and to inform you as to what can happen, but also to offer you a forum to ask your questions, exchange your worries, exchange ideas. So that's what the intention of these webinars are for. So we help you to understand what are the upcoming legislations, what are the upcoming obligations with respect to the European textile strategy, how will that transform the sector, how will that transform your reality, how you are most likely going to be impacted. If I say we, then I refer to a joint organization of these webinar series, firstly by the Partnership for Sustainable Textiles, and on the other hand, the green button. The Partnership for Sustainable Textiles is a multi-stakeholder initiative where different stakeholders like brands, retailers, civil society, standard organizations, German government, and so on and so forth, can exchange ideas and work together to promote sustainability in the global textile supply chain. And then Green Button, on the other hand, is a government-run certification label. They both secretariats fall under the GIZ umbrella. 3 webinars are also being organized in co-organization with GIZ Fabric. All right, so a warm welcome to everyone who just jumped in. We're here to talk today about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Last month, we had our first webinar on the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And I'm just going to give you a quick recap in case you weren't there or in case you would like to have a refresher on that one. So due diligence is about preventing violation of human rights, environmental impacts, and also labor rights. It's a directive, and that goes also for the reporting directive. It's a directive, so that means that Europe sets out goals for European countries to achieve, and then local governments translate those directives into local laws. So they can differ depending on which country you live in. When we're talking about the due diligence directive, what is there to know? That due diligence directive that anchors human rights, labor rights, and environmental considerations into your daily operations. So it has you reflect on how to deal with those aspects and definitely also how to prevent violation of them. It is a set of rules that ensure that adverse impacts due to your corporate actions and decisions are prevented or get addressed across your entire supply chain. It's a very heavy risk-based approach and so not yet finalized. So we expect this to be ready early 24 and then put into place in some companies in early 2026. However, what you can do already when it comes to corporate sustainability due diligence, that is start mapping and prioritizing existing risks with respect to human rights, labor rights, and environmental considerations, and start creating a due diligence policy. That means start bringing your legal department and your board together to start thinking about how to address the most severe risks and create a policy, a company policy for that. And then from that, standard procedures and operation procedures. Good to know there is make sure to include the voice of your right holders in your supply chain. So include everyone in your supply chain and start conversations with everyone throughout the supply chain and definitely also your suppliers. All right, we have a recording on this first webinar, so should you have missed that and would like to still see it again at the end of this webinar, my colleagues' contact details will be on, so feel free to also reach out to her. But Today, we're not talking about due diligence, we are talking about the reporting directive. So the objective for today is, first of all, get a good understanding what this directive is about, what the scope of it is, and also get a feel for how to implement that, how to best prepare for CSRD, the reporting directive. Before we dive into the details, I have a few practical things to say still. This is a recorded session, which means that you will be able to look back at the recording after the webinar is done. It will be published publicly, however, you won't show. So feel free to switch on your cameras if you wish so. You won't be showing onto the recording. As I said, the aim for this webinar series is to inform you, but also to exchange on ideas and questions. So down below in your screen, you have a little chat bubble, a speech bubble that you can click on. So should you have any questions throughout the webinar, throughout our experts that are speaking, you're thinking, oh, this is a question I would like to ask, feel free to do so. Go to the chat box and type your questions. We have our experts monitoring those questions, but also two of my brilliant colleagues, if I may say so. We have Marie Schaaf, she's the due diligence expert from GIZ, and we have Isabel Reichenbach, and there they are. She's a project manager at the partnerships. They will also monitor your questions and answer them in the chat. So the intention here is really to, if you have a question, just ask it and we'll aim at answering that. Sometimes some questions slip through, so please excuse us for that. But our intention is to really get back to you. All right, that leaves me to go to the program for today. So as you can see on the slide that is going to be popped up. We have, first of all, Marleen Vesper-Greske, who will be talking about the reporting directive, get us a good understanding. What is this about? What is the scope? Then we have Chantal Greef, who is going to talk about what is ahead for us as a company. How will you be impacted and what are we to expect? And then lastly, we have Gerard Grimm, who will be sharing their experience as to how to implement the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Last but not least, we'll have 15 minutes of discussions, so make sure to also ask your questions. We'll be monitoring that and bring that into the discussion. Voila, that's the program for today. A warm welcome to everyone who's just joined. This session will be recorded, so no worries if you get distracted somewhere in between. Things will be recorded, but this is going to be a super interesting session as well, so bear with us. All right, before we dig into the details, there is one question I have for you, actually. No worries, we won't ask you to come on stage here, but I am curious actually about your expectations for today. So if all goes well, we have a little poll that should be shown in the chat. There we are. So the question to you is, what are your expectations? And so possible answers, I'm just listening in to learn more about what CSRD is about. Or maybe you're looking to find answers to questions you already have, or you hope to take home a few tangible steps so that you can start moving forward or prepare already. So have a look in the chat. There is a poll running to ask, what are you here for? What do you hope to find? Just getting some informations, looking for answers to questions you already have, or looking for tangible steps to move forward. All right, and let's have a look there. So most of you are here to listening and get informed about what CSRD is about. And then also a few people are interested to really take home tangible steps to start moving forward and to start working on it. So that's very good to know. Thank you everyone for answering the poll, but also for being here. And I am sure that this will be a very informative session for you. All right. Then it's time for me to introduce you to our first expert. Our first expert is Marlene Vesper-Greske. She is a principal associate at Freshfield Brookhouse Deringer. Marlene is an attorney at Freshfields, and she focuses specifically on ESG compliance, corporate governance, as well as internal investigations. She's advising international clients in all areas of corporate, ESG, and human rights, and also criminal compliance. She's the founding member of Freshfields Global Business, and she studied law in Germany, in France, and in New York. She publishes a lot of articles and presents at different conferences in university on specifically compliance topics and a heavy focus on human rights and supply chain compliance. Marlene is going to give us an overall introduction in the policy landscape in which CSRD is situated, and she'll explain a bit why sustainability reporting is distinct from financial reporting. So Marlene, the stage is yours, and everyone enjoy.
Thank you very much, Magali. Thank you for the warm introduction. I will just quickly try to share my presentation. Just give me 1 second. We practiced it before. It should work. So can everybody see the presentation? Yes, okay, I have a thumb up, that is fine. Okay, then let's start. So thank you very much again for inviting me, and it's actually, as I understood also, the webinar already talked about the CSDDD and also a bit more about the textile strategy of the EU. So I'm just quickly putting the CSRD still into the context. So the topic that we're talking about today, sustainability reporting, putting it a bit more into context of the EU Green Deal, of the Circular Economy Action Plan, and also on the textile strategy. So as most of us know, everybody almost, the European Union's Green Deal aims to address the threat of climate change by reducing emissions and accelerating green growth. So at the heart of the Green Deal, actually, there is this commitment by the 27 EU member states to turning the EU into the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And one big part of this is, of course, circular economy. You can see some priorities here on this slide. And I hope to make it a bit more comprehensible by this slide here. So where you can see that the EU Green Deal is actually the broader picture, is really the kind of the philosophy for the EU. And then we have on a slightly smaller scale, we have the Circular Economy Action Plan, and the Sustainable and Circular Textile Strategy is one part of this circular economy and of the Green Deal. So the textile strategy actually aims to create a greener, more competitive sector. The Commission's 2030 vision for textiles is that all textile products placed on the EU market are durable, repairable, and recyclable, and to a great extent made of recyclable and recycled fibers, free of hazardous substances, and produced in respect of social rights and the environment. So this goes to the heart of the supply chain in the textile sector. And as the Commission says, fast fashion is out of fashion, so it's not en vogue anymore, and won't be or shouldn't be a part of the EU's textile strategy and the EU's textiles vision for the future. So our topic today is the CSRD, so the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and this kind of belongs a bit more to the sustainable finance strategy of the EU, but they are very much interlinked. As you probably know, the reporting requirements, and we're getting into this in more detail in a moment, is very broad. So it really requires companies to report on a wide area of topics. And this, of course, also includes supply chain transparency and environmental compliance with environmental standards. So this is also everything that is part of the sustainable textile strategy. So creating the transparency via the sustainability reporting directive is key is very key to the sustainable textile strategy. So if you go one step further, I would like to introduce you or try to show a quick picture on how the strands of sustainability reporting can be made more comprehensible, at least I think so, which is, if you think about it, like we have two separate strands or two strands that are in the focus of sustainability reporting. One is the topic that we're talking about today, and the other one a bit as well, but like the main topic is the overarching corporate sustainability reporting, which means the annual corporate reporting that has to be done annually and is part of the management report of companies. And it, like back then, traditionally, it meant, and it was always about financial reporting, financial data. Then in 2017 or 2014, actually, the directive, the non-financial reporting directive, was enacted by the EU, and which included introduced certain very specific sustainability aspects, which was environment, human rights, anti-corruption, and labor rights. And this was so quite limited, but also very broad terms, as you can see. And this was introduced by the non-financial reporting directive, which is actually the directive that was there before and started the whole sustainability reporting mechanisms for the EU. And the NFRD, as the word says, non-financial reporting, shows that the thinking of the legislator back then was that we have financial reporting, which has, of course, a very high significance for companies, and then we have kind of this very small, in the corner, we have the non-financial reporting part. So the whole philosophy and the whole theory behind it changed now with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and that's actually one of the probably most important issues, most important things to understand, that the EU no longer thinks about ESG and sustainability data being non-financial, but being financial. And that's why they really changed the term. And we now only talk about sustainability reporting and financial reporting, but not anymore about non-financial reporting. Another part of this is also the green taxonomy regulations, which shapes directly the sustainability reporting via the different member states. So the corporate sustainability reporting directive would need to be, as it is in a directive, would need to be implemented in the member states, and it was just adopted actually in January 2023 now. Still needs to be adopted to become applicable to the companies and to really govern the reporting in the member states. On the other side, we have what I would call like specific sustainability reporting elements or legislation that is like really not on everything and does not cover like the whole annual corporate reporting at the basis, but this is more specifically targeted, for example, specific sectors or specific legislation, specific products that you are producing as your business model, and where you have like specific links to a legislation that requires you now to also report. So there's a lot of compliance legislation coming out of the European Union at the moment that in itself always has as one strand, apart from all the compliance and all the duties to act for companies at the same site or in parallel, we have a reporting requirement. And this is, for example, the deforestation regulation, but also the corporate sustainability due diligence directive. Because I'm from Germany, I added the German supply chain duty of care. And of course, it's not EU introduced, but it is kind of was initiated also by this. Remuneration reports and also pay transparency reports. So there's a lot of reporting going on and being required for companies, which means, of course, that companies would, need to think about reporting differently now. Reporting becomes an increasing importance, as you can see by the volume of legislation. And I just picked some examples. So which means actually also as practical steps, corporations would need to focus more on reporting and also providing more resources. But also one big part, and everybody knows this as we are talking about greenwashing a lot these days, and very importantly, the data needs to be correct, the information needs to be correct. and consistent. So all the reports that are put out by companies need to be consistent in itself to prevent from being allegations of greenwashing. If you go now to the substance of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, you can see, or I already mentioned that came into force on 5th January 2023. And for the moment, at least I can say for Germany, we do not yet have a kind of an official draft of the implementation legislation. So we only have some leaks that show some preparatory works, which is still good. I mean, it is a very comprehensive task for the legislator to implement the CSRD into national law. But we're still waiting for an official draft to get a bit more safety, a bit more guidance on what it would actually mean under the national law. And this will be, as the NFRD was also incorporated into the German Commercial Code, so the same will happen with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. What the aim is of this CSRD, or why the EU actually started and began this whole project, is to make sustainability, to change the, as I said, to change the meaning, the significance of sustainability information and matters, but also to make sustainability reporting more comprehensible, more comparable, more more informative for consumers, for the public, and for investors. So the CSRD will not apply to all companies at the same time. It will be we will have a kind of phased approach when the directive will come into force for a specific size of companies. But the biggest ones that already now fall under the NFRD, so the Non-Financial Reporting Directive, the former one, all of those will already have to report in 2025, but already for the financial year 2024, which means that, of course, from the beginning of January 2024, all the underlying processes that you want to report on, or that you have to report on, would need to be in good shape. So we see like a lot of companies already being prepared or preparing a lot for the CSRD, for the first CSRD reporting year, which is 2024. Oh, sorry. So the CSRD also includes an assurance requirement, and this is completely new. So that means that their auditors will have to give assurance on the sustainability information that was under German law voluntary at the moment, and this will of course also significantly change the significance again of the data that you put into the reporting into the sustainability reports. One of the biggest things that changes now is that the EU touched upon the reporting standards. So they did not want to have like these soup of reporting standards, like you have a number of different reporting standards that you could not actually then easily compare. So they could not compare the sustainability reports in the end. And that's why the EU came up with a unified reporting standards, which are the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ESRS. And you might have noticed that it took us, or was a quite long journey to being finalized, and the Commission adopted the ESRS in July 2023, but still last week actually we had a kind of a very nervous moment because almost everybody thought that the ESRS are all close to final. There was the European Parliament, or at least there was from some groups within the European Parliament, there was a move to maybe reject the adoption of the ESRS, or reject the coming into force of the ESRS. And that caused some turmoil and some chaos, but in the end actually did not happen. So the European Parliament in itself did not veto the adopted ESRS, and we now still are just awaiting not the veto, but the acceptance by the Council of the European Union with regard to the ESRS, and then actually they will be finalized. They will be final and will come into force, will be published. For the ESRS, we go one slide further here. You see that we have two overarching cross-cutting standards which provide general principles on disclosure and reporting, and we have 10 specific, topic-specific standards which deal with environment, with social, and with governance. Governance just one, but as you can see, I mean, it looks now not being too much probably detailed information, but if you have a look at the whole delegated act that are the ESRS that was adopted in July, it's about 250 pages, 245 pages, so quite a lot of information to go through and to decide whether to report on or not, and actually deciding on whether to report on or not. The most one of the very specific elements at the moment, and that where a lot of companies are dealing with at the moment, is the so-called double materiality. So this is something that the CSRD introduced as well. This is specifically relevant for the ESRS that we are talking about right now, because that means that companies will not only have to look at what sustainability means for their business and for their financial performance, but also what they themselves, their business model, their business operations mean to the environment and to social matters. So it's these two perspectives that were introduced by the ESRS, by the CSRD, and that really make a huge difference also compared to other sustainability reporting frameworks that we see at the moment, like the ISSB or also TCFD. So reporting standards that are probably more common at the moment in the UK or also in the US. So this really changes. Furthermore, there will be sector-specific standards, about 40 plus, and this will also include the textile sector, manufacturing of textiles. I'm sorry. And adoption was again delayed, was previously planned to have them in 2024. Now it was postponed and was announced that they are now expecting the sector-specific standards to be published in 2026. These are just quick examples on reporting standards like the ESRS S2, workers in the value chain, that are of relevance, of course, for the textile sector, where you can see, usually you also have to really discuss the policies related to value chain workers, but also to your own workers if you go to another ESRS. Another example, ESRS E5, very important for the textile sector, is the resource use and circular economy. Also here you can see you have to report about your policies, about resources that are inflowing and outflowing, and also anticipate financial effects from resources from the circular economy. If we have a look now quickly on some related, we already talked about the CSDDD, but finding out what are actually the intersections of the CSRD and the CSDDD. So I'm not going into detail of this into the CSDDD anymore. That is just a quick overview to remind you of what you most of you probably hopefully heard in the last webinar. So I just want to stress one point, which is the reporting issue under the CSDDD, and I mentioned that before also, there is a big reporting part under the CSDDD, and the CSDDD, at least in Article 11, says that companies that are reporting under the CSRD will be exempted from reporting under the CSDDD. So there would be actually something that would be useful for companies, not having to produce two reports, one on the supply chain due diligence that is required under the CSDDD, and one for supply chain due diligence and all of the other aspects. But once you have, you include reporting on supply chain, value chains, on human rights and environment in the supply chains, once you include this into the CSRD, because it also is material to your business, you do not have to report on the under the CSDDD framework anymore. And I have a very quick overview just to show you some differences. So the subject we talked about, we have these two cross-cutting standards, and we have 10 topics, specific standards, which cover E, S, and G. And then for the CSDDD, we have this very limited view on due diligence in supply chains, potential and actual adverse human rights and environmental aspects, and action taken in response to this. So the typical corrective action plans, and the risk and governance framework for the company itself with respect to human rights compliance. We have a requirement of assurance under the CSRD, which we do not have under the CSDD, which makes perfectly sense because it is in itself not a reporting legislation. It is really a due diligence, really a compliance, like a legislation that requires companies to act and not only to present or to establish transparency. So the CSRD requires the double materiality lens. We already talked about this. Nothing like this is seen in the CSDDD, and it's completely, because it is completely different from a reporting perspective. Already talked about the exemptions for the companies reporting under the CSRD. And there will be further guidance by the Commission for the companies that are not reporting under CSRD. So, as you know, I'm sure CSDDD also directly captures the non-EU companies, and those usually do not have to report under the CSRD. Depends on the size, and there are some mechanisms where the CSRD requires non-EU companies to report, which is via its subsidiaries in the EU. So there needs to be a link in the EU. And then they would also be exempted, but for the, say, companies, non-EU companies, they do not have this link with subsidiaries in the EU. They would need to report under the CSDDD, and there will be specific reporting guidance by the European Commission that are coming up. Then we already talked about this phased approach, which is like, you have 2024, the earliest for the NFRD. And then, as I also mentioned, the non-EU reporting would only kick in then for the financial year 2028. And I think I would stop here and hand over to the next speaker. And thank you very much.
All right, Marleen, thank you very much for this comprehensive overview. Quite a lot to digest, so I'm going to try to summarize real quickly. What we've been hearing is we've been talking about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is part of the European Green Deal that aims to make Europe a climate neutral continent by 2050. And for a textile strategy, I heard a focus on really making that textile more durable, recyclable, and more made from recycled materials in respect for social rights, but also for the environment. I heard fast fashion is out of fashion. That's a nice takeaway as well, I think. And then with respect to that reporting, we see an increasing importance of reporting being required. That means that as a company, you are to start allocate time to focus on that reporting, to allocate more resources to it, and to also allocate focus to the fact that data needs to be truly correct and consistent. The aim of this directive is to change the significance of sustainability information and make it more comprehensive and comparable, not only for people, but also for investors. Then most likely, we're still waiting for acceptance by the European Council, but then reporting will start in 2025 for the financial year of 2024. At least that's what I've been hearing. So the underlying processes need to be in shape. You need to start preparing for that. We're still waiting for an official draft to understand what it means under national law. However, that doesn't mean that you cannot start prepare yourself. Sector-specific standards will also follow still, and they will be put into place in 2026, and that is sector-specific for the textile industry. So last but not least, what I've also been hearing is that to decide on whether to report or not, you are to take into account double material reality. And what does that mean? You are not to only look at what sustainability means for your business and for your financial reporting, but you are also to look at what your business models and your operations mean to the environment and to social matters. So you have that double material reality there. All right, that's in a very short summary about Marlene's presentation. To all people who just joined in, a very, very warm welcome. Should you have missed a part of this, we have a recording available at the end of this session, also on the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive that Marlene touched upon. So if you would like to get in touch with a colleague on that, contact details will be shared later on. And if you have questions, please make use of the chat. Our experts are here to answer all your questions, small, big, doesn't matter. This is your chance to ask whatever is popping up. So make use of the chat and ask your questions. All right, and then without much further ado, I have the pleasure to introduce to you our second expert. Chantal Greef is a senior consultant for reporting and dialogue at one of Germany's leading sustainability consultancies, Stakeholder Reporting. She's a project lead there, so she works on CSRD within the fashion industry and reporting of international consumer goods manufacturer. She has a background in fashion management and did that in Germany, Paris and Milan, as well as an MBA in sustainability management. A perfect combination, if I may say so. Previously, she worked on corporate communications and sustainability project management at various companies like Zalando, Hermes, and also the International Textile Trade Fair in Munich. Chantal will share with us a bit more about the differentiated consideration for companies of different sizes. What happens if you are a small or a bigger company who might be indirectly impacted, and what can already be done. So she'll be focusing on your reality. Chantal, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Magali. I hope you can all hear me well, and I will now share my screen as well. So, yes, I guess you can all see the presentation now. Yeah, I think Magali already said a lot. I will mainly focus on the practical view on what's really coming ahead for you. Before that, just a really quick view. Magali already said, yeah, stakeholder reporting is one of Germany's leading consultancies in the sustainability field, because we are helping companies transforming their businesses for more than 20 years now, and we are a team of more than 70 sustainability experts in a lot of focus fields around sustainability. And to start with, I want to start with the current dynamics in the textile industry regarding the CSRD reporting, since I can actually see quite a few differences and also specialities to the status quo and dynamics in other industries. So first, I would say that it's a fact that sustainable transformation has been one of the really leading industry topics for years now. So what we can see is that due to the former pressure by stakeholders and regulations, there's more transparency regarding social topics, for example, workers in the value chain or own workforce, than regarding environmental topics like your corporate carbon footprint or your impact on biodiversity. So you as companies in the textile industry often have in-depth knowledge about your very complex supply chains, and a unique characteristic is also that there is a pretty long-term relationship often between brands and suppliers. I'm also sure that you all have already talked about or already launched some sustainability projects and practice or discussed about the sustainable development of your business. But what I see as a big challenge is that concrete sustainability strategies, goals, processes, and data management are often missing. So speaking to companies in your industry, we experienced some concerns towards the CSRD and all the steps that have to be taken due to the complexity, but also due to the effort that the regulation brings with it. So a very big advantage of your industry is your big number of initiatives. And one of my biggest tips today would directly be to really use this collaborative mindset also for the upcoming challenges of the CSRD reporting. Having said that, yeah, I will have a quick view on the status quo of different company sizes in the textile industry. Yeah, of course, this is a very general assessment, and I'm sure that there are also exceptions. Sorry, but yeah, in general, there are some companies that already published sustainability reports before, and they can now build on these experiences. So these are mainly larger companies and are often pretty well prepared due to already defined strategies and processes, as well as knowledge in the team. But the ESRS demands a more in-depth disclosures. So thinking about large companies, CSRD reporting may start to be mandatory from the financial year 2024 or 2025. And I see as the main challenges for these companies to close the gaps and also to transform the existing information and data to comply to the ESRS standards. But I would say that the majority of companies may say that they start from zero regarding sustainability reporting. So mostly this is the case for small and medium-sized enterprises who may be required to report after CSRD starting from the financial year 2025 or 2026. The companies often have long-term relationships with their suppliers, which will be a huge asset in the process, and also carried out some sustainability projects before maybe, but most of the time there is no strategic sustainability data and information gathering and practice. So the main challenges for these companies will be to build the capacities and know-how in the team and the company for the reporting, as well as to set up the reporting processes in general. So Marlene already mentioned the sector-specific ESRS standards, so I won't get into detail here and directly jump to the challenges and opportunities. I already mentioned some challenges for the different company sizes, but I think it's good to have a deeper look at the challenges and also the opportunities that come with the CSRD reporting. It's pretty funny. I already heard a company saying the sentence, to be honest, the complexity is completely overwhelming for us. We don't know where to start. And just like some weeks later, after starting the reporting process, this view changed already to it's actually a really good starting point for becoming aware of our current sustainability performance and also to set new goals for the whole company. So this summarizes pretty well that organizations should see the preparation of the sustainability report not just as a cost factor and a challenging mandatory task, but rather as an opportunity to promote a rethink in the company. But yeah, if we have a quick overview of the main challenges, I would start with maybe lacking monetary and topic-specific support from management level, as well as different ideas about topics of the highest relevance in the company. Another challenge is definitely internal capacities and the know-how. So to say that really someone just has the time to set up and manage the reporting process while also deepening the knowledge about CSRD and bringing this know-how into the company. Also, the reporting process itself with the complex regulations and the need for concrete reporting structures and the sensible controlling and data systems is really challenging. And your company may also face the challenge to strategically use the collected data and insights for rethinking the company processes. Something that's really important for me to give to all the companies is please don't forget about the consumer communication. This is also important thinking about the Green Claims Directive. But really, when you set up the sustainability reporting process, think about the link between the sustainability report with other formats to deliver easy to consume summaries for the average knowledge level of end consumers. So yeah, these challenges may definitely seem overwhelming, but as I said, CSRD should also be seen as a big chance as well. So to start, we already heard that the overall goal of the CSRD is to reach equality of sustainability and financial reporting, which will lead to a higher relevance of the topic for the company management, as well as to increase the social acceptance for sustainability transformation. And in your company, the really dealing with sustainability issues raises awareness of your own actions, which will drive strategic development with the aim to create more resilient, future-oriented business models. So the CSRD also includes identifying impacts, risks, and opportunities, which will strengthen the ability to innovate in your company and will inspire to optimize internal processes. All in all, the CSRD will disclose new information and lead to transparency, which is building trust with stakeholders, can strengthen your credibility, help to build your reputation, image, and can also help with your employer branding. So after these challenges and opportunities, I want to give you some support for your really practical approach of the CSRD reporting. So to show you the very first steps to take. I'm sure that some of you already took some of these steps, but for first-time reporters, the process would start with the scope. So does my company generally fall within the scope of the regulation? And if yes, when and what requirements do we have to meet? If not, then what implicit effects can the legal requirement have for my company, and how can we prepare ourselves? If the answer was yes, and some ESA expertise has been built, then a status quo analysis would follow. So where does my company stand at the moment? Because then the next steps could be identified. But really important is the step 4, the prioritization. So which processes need to be adapted first and which gaps need to be closed as a priority. The next step is to see who is the content owner of the requested topics in the company, who is the main project lead, and how do we make sure that the management board is involved. Followed by the roadmap. So what's my company's part to CSRD compliance? Yeah, of course, the process doesn't end with the shown 6 steps, which is why I also prepared 2 potential roads to compliance as example. Please keep in mind that these roadmaps are very company specific and of course way more detailed, but I just wanted to show you 2 possibilities. And having a look at the time, I won't go into too much detail, but just show that I prepared one example of a medium-sized company that has no experience in reporting. And this company could start next year in 2024 with the preparations to really build the capacities and the know-how in the company. Then in 2025, build the processes, and then publish the first CSRD report in 2026. Example 2 would be a large company with former experience in GRI reporting. And there I would see in 2024 to really set a CSRD roadmap, to also do a double materiality analysis, ESRS gap analysis, etc., to then publish the first CSRD reporting, for example, in 2025, and then in 2026 optimize their processes and data gathering. So the key takeaway for me of these two potential roads is very clear. So better start sooner than later, because no matter the company size or starting point, it will make your progress easier in the long term and will spread the workload over a bigger time frame than if you just shift the starting point to a later time. Marlene already mentioned that the CSRD encompasses the entire value chain, which means that the reporting scope according to ESRS corresponds to the scope of consolidation used for financial reporting, extended by the upstream and downstream value chain, which means that CSRD indirectly impacts other members of the value chain as well. So, for example, suppliers might not always be directly in scope, but will be impacted if they are producing for companies that are in scope. So there are some implications for suppliers and first steps they can take already today to prepare themselves. And I would love to share just 4 tips with you. So first, we see that different companies have different understandings of the standards and the processes behind CSRD, which is why suppliers should get into conversations with the brands at an early stage to hear about the current status quo and to build an aligned understanding. Then all suppliers are currently facing really similar challenges. So we see this as a big opportunity to connect to each other and to work collectively together. Since ESRS standards are really complex, another step would be to prepare themselves. So suppliers should really research the standards themselves, start to identify risks and prepare for what's coming. Because this also leads to the last point here. The full supply chain traceability involves a lot of data gathering, so that suppliers will face more data and compliance requests. So suppliers should strive already today to be compliant, which makes it easier in the long term and will spread the work also here over a bigger time frame. So I know this was a lot of information, but we will have time in the end for your questions. And the good news is that now Gerhard will now give you an even more practical insight into the CSRD reporting process of his company. So I will end to share my screen.
All right, thank you very much, Chantal, for the comprehensive overview and for giving us a sneak peek into where we are actually with respect to the industry. So what I've been hearing is that for larger companies that already have strategies and processes in place, it's important to start looking at closing the gaps. how to transform your existing information and data to really comply with those ESR standards and start looking to close those gaps. For medium-sized, smaller companies and other companies that don't have those processes into place yet, it's important to start building up know-how into your team and start to create those reporting processes, because just the former sustainability project as such is not enough. You really need to get to that process level and build it into your strategy as a company. I've been hearing a few challenges, challenges to get support from the management level, challenges to get capacity and how to build up that know-how. The implementation of the process itself is a process which is complex and not that easy to do. And consumer communication also important and not to be left out, and how to deal with that then. However, there is a lot of opportunities here as well. So the relevance for that management actually to be comparable, but also to give you a competitive advantage in the market. There is opportunities for strategic development if you start looking into those processes. It's also about innovation and looking at risk management, which is beneficial for your company as a whole, as usual. And then it also helps to build up trust and credibility and your reputation towards your stakeholders. So last but not least, I've heard you refer to those suppliers as well. And so suppliers are impacted if they are producing for companies that are into scope. So if you are a supplier, it's important to also start gearing up, start conversation with your value chain, with the clients you're working for, build an aligned understanding of what are we talking about when we talk about that reporting. Collaborate with other suppliers in the sector to connect and work on it collectively, because we're all in this together. And start preparing, identifying the risks that are there and research the standards. I've heard you say better start sooner than later. That is only going to lead to a more easy process in the long term. So that's a perfect, smooth, how do you say that? To go to Gerard, because he's going to talk about how that implementation was at CNA, and he's going to give us even a more detailed insight in that. So thank you, Chantal, for your contribution. And as I said, we're going to switch to Gerard. Should you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to use the chat. I've seen a few questions already rolling there. Our experts are there for you, so they're very much happy to answer any questions that you might have. And now it's time for Gerard Grimm. He's the lead transparency and reporting at CNA. He kind of breathes sustainability, if I may say so, because for almost 7 years, he's been in the sustainability team of CNA, and that in various functions. Today, he is the lead transparency and reporting in the global sustainability team. And so he includes, that includes responsibility for annual sustainability reporting. So he's really working on the matter. He'll be talking about that practical insight and give us an insight as to how things are being done at CNA. So Gerard, the stage is entirely yours.
Yeah, thanks, Magali. Hi everyone. I'll share some insights how that works at CNA and what our experience is. This by no way is meant to be a blueprint or best practice. I think every company does this very different, and we also had to find our way how we do it. And in a sense, I'm not an expert. I think we had the experts before. I'm kind of a user and in a very similar position than a lot of people in that call. So as Magali said, I'm Gerhard. I work at CNA on transparency and reporting. And of course, I have a natural interest in this transition from classic sustainability reporting into a more standardized integrated reporting under CSRD, since it's part of my responsibilities. That said, is of course not only my responsibility. This is a very wide, even today's sustainability report, a very wide effort that includes big parts of the organization, and going forward, it will include even even larger parts of the organization. So let me quickly share my screen. See if that works. Oh, I hope you can all see my presentation now. Control. Now you should see a full screen presentation if my technical instructions were all correct. Okay, so CSRD and CNA. Maybe a few words to CNA. So CNA is a family-owned business and it operates in 17 countries in Europe. That already shows, which we will see a little bit later, some of the elements taken into consideration when you talk about CSRD, especially when you talk about the scope and how you approach that. So where do we stand regarding to CSRD and what's our view on CSRD? So for us, this is really a way to level the playing field by allowing comparability, as we heard before. And we think that's a really good direction because at the moment you have various levels of reporting or non-reporting, and comparability is really an issue. We also see CSRD as an element to help further strengthening our sustainability strategy, which is an element of our business strategy. So that process will give us a lot of opportunities to further strengthen that strategy. And as a non-listed company, we are in scope as of financial year 2025. So that means, and here I would already want to reach out to some companies, maybe in that call, that are a little bit further in this journey. Please chip in at the end at the Q&A and share your insights as well, because we are, I would say, still at a starting point, right, from my perspective. So we are in this transition from today's reporting to what is required tomorrow. My team started 2 years ago to look into CSRD approximately to get a first understanding. So what is this all about? Whilst it was still very vague. And it's set approximately 1 year, I would say, on the agenda within CNA. And we are starting off projects around that. The main transition is that, yeah, we have a long history of reporting performance and progress, but in today's world, because we're a non-listed company, we have a high flexibility on the level of topics which we cover. Yes, we are following standards like GRI, which of course tailors in a way, but there is still a lot of flexibility, and assurance is voluntary. Now, in our preparation for tomorrow, what we are doing is we are currently conducting our second double materiality assessment. We have had a first double materiality assessment a year ago. That was before the ESRS were finally published, giving a lot more direction and dealing out a lot more how you have to do a double materiality assessment. The idea at that time was to get used to that concept and already reach out to stakeholders within the company that are usually not involved in that type of assessment to, I would say, plant a little bit the seed around the topic. Now we have, now the standards are out. It's much more clearer what are all the elements you have to look at and how you have to look at them. So we are doing a second double material assessment this year, and we're in the middle of it. And that's also for us the starting point, right? You start with your double materiality to understand what are the topics that you will then have to cover in your reporting. The next element is then the gap analysis. So there is a lot around, most probably in your company, but it's maybe in all different kind of places. So it's important to start an inventory of what is there on policies, actions, targets, metrics, data, so all the elements you later on have to report against. And that can almost be a process in parallel. So whilst you do your double materiality assessment, you can already start understanding what are the gaps, because certain topics in your double materiality are most probably material by definition, although they are not mandatory, it's highly likely that you will report on emissions, for example. What we've also been doing in preparation is, like in the last report which we published, we are enhancing our GRI. So we are trying to cover more and more topics in GRI because a lot of them are linked and are elements of the ESRS. So that just helps us to get us to the next step. We definitely will try to include some ESRS elements in the next report already. Just to be, like we've seen before, have more step-by-step approach on getting ready for the final reporting. And then assurance readiness, excuse me, is a big topic. So data quality, data consistency, data availability, processes, having had your processes set up that they're also assurable is, it's a big element which we are working on at the moment. So challenges, we've heard some of the challenges already, and of course we're all going through the same ones. I also find it overwhelming, right? It's a lot, like I get now a lot more questions related to ESRS, and every time you start looking into ESRS and you really look for details, it's not always easy to find them. It looks very big. So I think the first thing is to find a way to make it digestible. And I think following the process of starting with your double materiality and then understanding what are your gaps and then developing your related implementation plans, and of course alongside that having the governance and everything in place, is a way to make it digestible, especially when you talk to other people within and outside your organization, because otherwise it looks big and it looks far away, but in fact it can be made digestible and it's not far away. Also 2026 might sound far away if you see what you need to have in place. It's much closer than people would estimate. I would also agree to see it as an opportunity. That's definitely the approach which we're taking here. We don't want this to be a compliance tick box exercise. It's also from an resource investment and time it takes to go through the process, not smart to just use it for ticking the boxes. You should really use it to improve the strategy, to improve your business processes, to help to inform your business strategy, to inform your risk assessment. So it has a lot of elements in there that can be used in not only in strategic areas, but also in daily operational activities. One challenge for us, being a company that is operating in 70 different countries, is of course to identify the scope and what's the potential impact. Do we have to report in 17 countries, which is, well, that would be a real challenge, right? What is a good way in order to maybe report on group level? What does it mean if you have entities that are based, for example, in Switzerland? So and that also takes quite a bit of time to identify what is really the scope you're operating in and what does that scope mean for your organization and what's the potential impact. Then it definitely has implications for large parts of the organization. So this is not where you have a handful of people working on something. At the end, especially once you start going through your double materiality, you need expertise from across the business. So I would say almost all departments are in one or the other way involved in that exercise, and that needs to be managed. And then lastly, I'd almost say as usual, it's data availability and of course the quality of the data. And more data will be required. So more data is already available. If it's not available, how do you make it available? What is the information you need in order to report against a certain data point? And how do you ensure the quality of that data? So lots of challenges, but I think once you start breaking it down, it becomes more manageable. Now, from an approach and learnings point of view, I reiterate actually on some of them, and it was quite good that the experts are sharing the same point of view. I would reiterate that. I think the number one thing is you need to establish a solid governance for that, which means you need support of the highest management level. You first of all, they anyway need to sign off at one sooner or later your material topics, but without the involvement of your management, you will not be able to move. Then, well, the way we've done it, we started to set up a cross-functional group working on the different elements, like starting now to work together on the double materiality assessment. I think what's not to be underestimated is the time it takes to get a certain understanding about CSRD, especially if you bring more people in a group. It took quite a while until we were all on the same level when we talk about CSRD, even as a core group. Because you're coming from different functions, you've been maybe more exposed to financial reporting or maybe more exposed to risk management, but not necessarily to non-financial or sustainability reporting. Capacity building in the organization, definitely important. Like you cannot go into a double materiality assessment, reaching out to your internal experts without building capacity on what are we actually doing here and why are we doing it? What is this about? Which also takes time. So we are back to you better start sooner than later. Starting, well, data exploration, as I call it. So trying to understand what is the data that is there and where is it and in which form or shape is it there, so that once you've identified your gaps, you have already a good basic understanding of your current data situation. And in that respect, of course, access to data requires a considerable amount of time, resources, and strong collaboration, especially when you talk about impact data. And we've already heard about the supply chain and the importance of suppliers, right? If you do a risk assessment and you want to understand your impact and you later on have to report against data, you need to have strong impact data. So that could be strong environmental data coming through industry tools like HIG-FEM, but also like the OECD due diligence risk assessment is a good starting point to access higher quality data, which you then utilize in your double materiality assessment and further on in your reporting. So that's a little bit how we approached it and where we are. I would say, it's not easy. Definitely not to be underestimated, but it's also not a monster. It can be digested. I would really suggest to see it as an opportunity and not as a tick box, right? Definitely not. What it also does is it brings more people at the table related to sustainability issues. So it's also a good way to embed your sustainability strategy stronger and your work around sustainability in the organization and outside. So the need to have so many stakeholders involved is a great opportunity to help all have a common understanding of what you want to achieve and helping to achieve it. Because especially around sustainability, nothing happens on your own. Everything you do is a group effort, and every stakeholder in your organization throughout your whole value chain actually plays a role in moving. So that's, I would say, a bit of a view from a company perspective. And I think I can stop sharing my screen and we can soon go back to the Q&A.
All right.
If that works.
Thank you very much, Gerard, for
You're
your
welcome.
honest and open insight in how CNA does it. What I really remember is like there is time to get familiar with what you're dealing with, like to get your management on board, to get that cross-functional core group together, and to actually find each other cross-departmentally, like to find each other inside the company to get an understanding, what are we talking about? So again, starting sooner than later is again what we get out of this, and so much more, but I would like to get into the Q&A. So I'm inviting all speakers to the stage here. And a question that I would like to start with is a question to Marleen. There were a lot of questions in the chat about the scope of CSRD. And so my first question would be, could you just briefly summarize a bit about that scope? What are we looking at? What is this about? And how are people, what are people to take home with about that scope today?
Yeah, happy to. It's a bit complicated. I think that's probably the point why I did not have it like on the slides, but because it is really many numbers, many different sizes that are in scope. So essentially, or if we and I posted it in the chat. So I hope that this is helpful already. So we have this phased approach 2024 for all the NFRD companies, which are public interest companies, listed companies, credit institutions, insurance companies that have 500 employees on average. Then for financial year 2025, we will have large companies in the EU which meet 2 out of 3 criteria, which is balance sheet total 20 million, net turnover 40 million, or more than 250 employees on average. As you can see, there's quite a and it goes on. Like for financial year 2026, we have another category of companies which are listed as small and medium-sized enterprises, but not micro companies. And it's probably important to know that all of these definitions on the companies like large, medium, small and medium-sized, micro, they all go back so they're not incorporated as a definition in the CSRD itself or in the NFRD, but they go back to the accounting directive. So this is a bit complicated. So you really have to look back to the basic directive that is now kind of adapted by NFRD and CSRD. So you have to start and go back to the accounting directive, and it is Article 2 or Article 3. I think it's Article 3 where we have all the definitions of the companies, and it's referring to it.
Okay, so actually something to keep an eye on and go back to the original texts to really get a good understanding of that scope. All right, thank you, Marleen. Gerard, you've been talking about data collection and data quality as an important aspect, and you're not the only one who talked about that, or other experts talked about that as well. My question would be like, where do you get that data? How do you know what data you need? Where do you get it? And how do you make sure that that data is of the quality you need?
Mm-hmm. So like in in this area, of course, it's lots of different data. And I think you are like documenting your reporting processes and having a clear reporting processes in place is essential. I guess your internal audit team can help on that as well sometimes, to review what's the audit process, how is the data entered into the system, who is doing what are the internal controls. So yeah, for all the main data streams which you've identified, that needs to be set up, and this is also valid if you take then data like FEM data. Same thing. Actually, you need to define, okay, so where's the data coming from? How is it entered into the system? Who is manipulating the data? In which way? So that later on an auditor can also review that element. But I'd say it's a long process. And you need to also be, I think, a little bit decisive on where you put your effort, because if you look at the CSRD and all the different standards, you have a million data points to look at. So one important thing is, like what has been said before, again, is the prioritization, that you say, okay, so this is a high priority area. This is the first one where we need to start doing this data exploration and really understanding from the start to the end what we do here.
And how do you make that prioritization? Is that risk-based or?
I think that, well, if I look at the CSRD, right, then part of the prioritization will come through a double materiality assessment. And you say, okay, this is clearly identifying what my material topics are, what my impacts, risks, and opportunities are. And then you have a long list of material topics. Then you need to, again, to prioritize, I guess, and say, okay, so out of this long list, what are the ones? Start. Where do we have, and you do a gap analysis. And in your gap analysis, you also understand where your gaps are. And that will help you deriving on, okay, this is an area highly important, but we have the feeling, okay, on the data side, there's still a lot of work to do. Well, and everything on data is long term. So then you will start with that one.
Okay. So I hear that double materiality assessment is actually a driver that helps, helps you prioritize things and helps you look at what gaps are still to be closed. So thank you for that. So what stands out, I think, in this webinar is that, and on the first hand, we have already concrete actions we need to take, but on the other hand, we feel that there is still some uncertainty of changing specifications and updates that are being done on the policy level and on the standards level and on the directive level. So Marlene, can you provide a bit of insight as to how companies have to work with that uncertainty that's still there, and how to already do the work? And Chantal, I want to ask your practical input there as well. Like, how are companies to work with that uncertainty? Maybe Marlene, you can start a bit from the policy standpoint, and Chantal, you can add from the practical point of view.
Sure, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, the uncertainty remains uncertainty, even if lawyers have a look at it. So we cannot change the fact that we have these, and we had this moment, like as I discussed last week, where the uncertainty came very palpable, and we really felt like all the ESRS work and probably double materiality work that you were already carrying out with putting a lot of resources and money to it would probably, or could probably, fail. Although, so at the moment, I think we are rather safe with the ESRS as they are at the moment. So we just have this one confirmation left by the council, but also with respect to the sector-specific guidance, sector-specific standards, of course, we will have to wait for this to really have certainty. But they will not change like the 12 basic standards now. So once they are done now, and so we just need this council confirmation, then you can already be sure that that's the reporting sustainability reporting world landscape that we have in the EU and also across. And companies should, because it is quite extensive work, a lot of work, and we've heard about it by the practitioners today. So it's it should start rather early, and double materiality is really something that I think also will remain and probably not go away anymore. Although from the global level, it's more well, you see different approaches. They still stick to the financial materiality at the moment, but maybe the EU has the capacity to influence this global wide, but we will see. And other than that, I would always recommend to really closely follow what's happening in Brussels, because that's what, with regard to ESG, it's really guiding and leading globally.
Okay, so I hear it's rather safe now. The basic 12 standards will not change, or likely not change anymore. And so follow closely what is happening actually on that level. Still, Chantal, is there anything you could add from your perspective still?
Yeah, so from a practical point of view, I would add that like even though the standards may change in details, we always say, or as I already said a lot, the companies should definitely start to get familiar with the overall ESRS standards, the goal, and to really build these capacities in the team, the know-how, do the status quo analysis, and also get familiar with the double materiality analysis. So all these steps can already and should already be done, although maybe the standards may change in detail.
Yeah, all right. So there is some generic things that can already be done. I hear building that capacity, building that know-how, buy-in from your management, like Gerard also starts saying, and then that double materiality assessment. So, all right. Good. That's good to know that we can already do things, and that is actually linked to a more generic aspect. So maybe one more questions, because I'm looking at the time here as well. Yeah, the sustainability statement report must be externally verified. And so I wonder which parts of that report are subject to assurance. Is that only the processes that have been identified as material topics, or also data that is being published? Like, what is it that is being looked at if we're talking about external verification of that statement, that report? Marleen and anyone who can add upon to that, can you explain that a little bit?
Who wants to go first? I think, I mean, there was still guidance coming up for this, and the big change is like, for the moment it was like voluntary, as I said, and it's more about like auditors had to assure that there was this non-financial report at least. But at the moment, or like the change now will be that they also have to verify the contents of the report and double materiality assessment as well, as far as they can trace that back. I mean, I'm just now looking at all the, like for clients, we're doing like materiality assessment and all the details and all this. It's really huge work to do this. And it's, I'm a bit troubled to imagine how assurance auditors, assurance companies can actually ever be able to kind of really go through this in a short time frame for a lot of companies at the same time. So that would be definitely also a challenge for the accounting firms, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So again, that double materiality assessment that comes up there. So that's truly something to take home with us. Gerard or Chantal, would you like to add something to that still about what is being externally verified?
No, I think I have the same question, right? It's something which is which we are trying to understand, and like you said, there is, I think, also the insurance companies try to understand, you know, what does it actually mean? Nobody has done it, so and the scope can go very wide, because documenting the process, how you identified your double materiality, I think that's a given. But once you go beyond and say, okay, so are you also verifying the process on the emission data, the process on other environmental data? Well, this is increasing the scope significantly, and we'll need a lot of, like like you said, I need a lot of time, right, to do it. And there is no time between the end of your financial year and their reporting. So yeah, but I think everybody is waiting for guidance here, and because it drives certain of your investments, yeah, by nature. So yeah, no, I cannot add more.
No worries. Chantal?
I don't know it too. I'm curious,
No worries.
like everybody else.
Chantal, I saw you nodding, but is there anything you would still like to add?
Yeah, so like maybe one really important point is that really the companies should start to document like every
Yes.
step, especially because of this uncertainty that we just talked about. So really start a huge documentation every step, but also document why didn't you take that step? Because maybe the auditors will come and say, why did you not choose, for example, to report about this topic? So really be prepared and just write down everything. And then maybe in the end, you don't use it, but it's also just good for your team to really see the whole process and maybe just 1 year afterwards go into details again and see what happened there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good takeaway as well. So what I hear, double materiality assessment is to be focused on, and then also focus on your whole process that you took towards becoming compliant. It's never too much information and never lost actually to be good prepared there. All right. Thank you very much, Gerard, Chantal and Marlene for being here. And then I have one last person that I can ask to the stage here, and that is Marie from the GIZ. She is going to tell us a bit more still about what's coming up in the next few months, and also a small little bit about a GIZ project. So Marie, go ahead.
Thank you, Magali. Yeah, I'm trying to make this quick since we're a little bit short on time. But yeah, thank you very much to you experts. I would say this was somewhat a blind spot for me, the reporting directive, to be honest. So I really am taking away a lot of fruitful information. So thank you guys. What I did want to inform you audience about was that, as you probably know, is that the Sustainability Code, the Deutscher Nachhaltigkeitskodex, they have their secretariat within the GIZ as well. So I did take the time to talk to the responsible colleagues, and I can inform you that they will use the time in 2024 to include the directive into their code, and then every company should be able to use it also. And additionally, they will be developing great support offers, so check out their website. There are also contact persons named, so just in case you need assistance, I think they are the right people to ask. And then that is the topic on CSRD and reporting, but then I also want to mention that there is a next webinar coming up on the 15th of November from 10 to 11:30 Central European Time. Please register. We will add the link in the chat. If you can't find it, please contact me. I think we will show it on the presentation on the final slide. This webinar will be on the EU legislations regarding waste, a comprehensive overview, since there are novelties regarding the issue in terms of waste shipment and also the new waste framework directive. So this session will provide an overview of the content of the proposals, and we will try to discuss the potential impacts for brands and retailers and suppliers. So we would be really happy to have you on board for this one, 15th of November, 10 to 11:30 Central European Time. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Marie. And also thank you at home. Thank you for being with us today and for diving into the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We are very much looking forward to welcome you next time in November 15th. And yeah, have a great day. The recording will be shared, so everything you will be able to look at it again. Make sure you register for that next webinar in November. And thanks again for being with us today. Have a beautiful day still. Bye.